What ascendancy and influence hath the dust itself, through the sacredness and potency of that blood, exercised over the bodies and souls of men, so much so that he who sought deliverance from his ills was healed by touching the dust of that holy ground, and whosoever wishing to protect his property treasured with absolute faith and understanding a little of that holy earth within his house, safeguarded all his possessions. These are the outward manifestations of its potency. And were we to recount its hidden virtues, they would assuredly say, He verily hath considered the dust to be the Lord of lords, and hath utterly forsaken the faith of God. Furthermore, call to mind the shameful circumstances that have attended the martyrdom of Hussein. Reflect upon his loneliness, how to outer seeming none could be found to aid him, none to take up his body and bury it, and yet behold how numerous in this day are those who from the uttermost corners of the earth don the garb of pilgrimage, seeking the site of his martyrdom, that there they may lay their heads upon the threshold of his shrine. Such is the ascendancy and power of God, such is the glory of his dominion and majesty. Karbala is the most visited pilgrimage site in the world. Well, I mean, it has the biggest pilgrimages. I'm not sure the rest of the year. Think not that because these things have come to pass after Hussein's martyrdom, think not that because these things have come to pass after Hussein's martyrdom, therefore all this glory hath been of no profit unto him. For that holy soul is immortal, liveth the life of God, and abideth within the retreats of celestial glory upon the Sadreh of heavenly reunion. These essences of being are the shining exemplars of sacrifice. They have offered and will continue to offer up their lives, their substance, their souls, their spirit, their all in the path of the well-beloved. By them no station, however exalted, could be more dearly cherished, for lovers have no desire but the good pleasure of their beloved, and have no aim except reunion with him. Should we wish to impart unto thee a glimmer of the mysteries of Hussein's martyrdom, and reveal unto thee the fruits thereof, these pages could never suffice, nor exhaust their meaning. Our hope is that, God willing, the breeze of mercy may blow, and the divine springtime clothe the tree of being with the robe of a new life, so that we may discover the mysteries of divine wisdom, and, through his providence, be made independent of the knowledge of all things we have as yet descried none but a handful of souls, destitute of all renown, who have attained unto this station. Let the future disclose what the judgment of God will ordain, and the tabernacle of his decree reveal. In such wise we recount unto thee the wonders of the cause of God, and pour out unto thine ears the strains of heavenly melody, that haply thou mayst attain unto the station of true knowledge, and partake of the fruit thereof. Therefore know thou of a certainty that these luminaries of heavenly majesty, though their dwelling be in the dust, yet their true habitation is the seat of glory in the realms above. Though bereft of all earthly possessions, yet they soar in the realms of immeasurable riches, and whilst sore tired in the grip of the enemy, they are seated on the right hand of power and celestial dominion. Amidst the darkness of their abasement, there shineth upon them the light of unfading glory, and upon their helplessness are showered the tokens of an invincible sovereignty. Thus, Jesus, son of Mary, whilst seated one day, and speaking in the strain of the Holy Spirit, uttered words such as these. O people, my food is the grass of the field, wherewith I satisfy my hunger. My bed is the dust. My lamp is in the night, the light of the moon, and my steed is my own feet. Behold, who on earth is richer than I? By the righteousness of God, thousands of treasures circle round this poverty, and a myriad kingdoms of glory yearn for such abasement. Shouldest thou attain to a drop of the ocean of the inner meaning of these words, thou wouldst surely forsake the world and all that is therein, and as the phoenix wouldst consume thyself in the flames of the undying fire. In like manner, it is related that on a certain day, one of the companions of Sadiq, Ja'far, the sixth Shia Imam, complained of his poverty before him, whereupon Sadiq, that immortal beauty, made reply, Verily, thou art rich, and hast drunk the draught of wealth. That poverty-stricken soul was perplexed at the words uttered by that luminous countenance, and said, Where are my riches, I who stand in need of a single coin? Sadiq thereupon observed, Dost thou not possess our love? He replied, Yea, I possess it, O thou scion of the Prophet of God. And Sadiq asked him, saying, Exchangest thou this love for 1,000 dinars? He answered, Nay, never will I exchange it, though the world and all that there is therein be given me. Then Sadiq remarked, How can he who possesses such a treasure be called poor? This poverty and these riches, this abasement and glory, this dominion, power, and the like, upon which the eyes and hearts of these vain and foolish souls are set, all these things fade into utter nothingness in that court, even as he hath said, O men, ye are but paupers in need of God, but God is the rich, the self-sufficing. See Al-Quran, Surah 35, Ayat 15. By riches, therefore, is meant independence of all else but God, and by poverty, the lack of things that are of God. Similarly, call thou to mind the day when the Jews who had surrounded Jesus, son of Mary, were pressing him to confess his claim of being the Messiah and prophet of God, so that they might declare him an infidel and sentence him to death. Then they led him away, he who was the day star of heaven of divine revelation, on the pilot and Caiaphas, who was the leading divine of that age. The chief priests were all assembled in the palace. Also a multitude of people who had gathered to witness his sufferings, to deride and injure him. Though they repeatedly questioned him, hoping that he would confess his claim, yet Jesus held his peace and spake not. Well, the prophets of God would speak in their own defense, so that doesn't sound like it's a correct part of the story. Finally, an accursed to God arose, and approaching Jesus, adjured him, saying, Didst thou not claim to be the divine Messiah? Didst thou not say that I am the King of the Jews? My word is the word of God, and I am the breaker of the Sabbath day? No, not that. He never said that he came to break the Sabbath day or any actual law. He came to plahrose, refurbish it. Thereupon Jesus lifted up his head and said, Beholdest thou not the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of power and might? These were his words, and yet consider how, to outward seeming, he was devoid of all power, except that inner power which was of God, and that which had encompassed all that is in heaven and on earth. How can I relate all that befell him after he spoke these words? How shall I describe their heinous behavior towards him? They at last heaped on his blessed person such woes that he took his flight into the fourth heaven. It is recorded in the Gospel, according to St. Luke, that on a certain day Jesus passed by a Jew who was sick of the palsy and lay upon a couch. When the Jew saw him, he recognized him, and cried out for his help. Jesus said unto him, Arise from thy bed, thy sins are forgiven. P. Certain of the Jews standing by protested, saying, Who can forgive sins but God alone? And immediately he perceived their thoughts. Jesus answering said to them, Whether it is easier to say to the sick of the palsy, Arise and take up thy bed and walk, or to say, Thy sins are forgiven thee, that they may know that the Son of Man hath power on earth to forgive sins. Well, that could be taken a bit far, but Luke 5:18 through 26. And we find that with different prophets, they were able to give certain people the news of the paradise hereafter, the news that their sins would all be forgiven. Certainly it was more people, but those were the people who could handle the news. Those were the people who the news wouldn't harm. This is the real sovereignty, and such is the power of God's chosen ones. All these things we have repeatedly mentioned, and the details which we have cited from diverse sources have no other purpose but to enable thee to grasp the meaning of the allusions and the utterances of the chosen ones of God, lest certain of these utterances cause thy feet to falter, and thy heart to be dismayed. Thus, with steadfast steps, we may tread the path of certitude, that perchance the breeze that bloweth from the meads of the good pleasure of God may waft upon us the sweet savours of divine acceptance, and cause us, vanishing mortals that we are, to attain unto the kingdom of the everlasting glory. Then wilt thou comprehend the inner meaning of sovereignty and the like, spoken of in the traditions and scriptures. Furthermore, it is already evident and known unto thee that these things which the Jews and Christians have clung, and the cavillings which they heaped upon the beauty of Muhammad, the same have in this day been upheld by the people of the Quran, and have been witnessed in their denunciations of the point of the Bayan. Well, they're certainly not accepting this guy as a new prophet. There's nothing to indicate that he's more than a commentator to them. May the souls of all that dwell within the kingdom of divine revelations be a sacrifice unto him. Behold their folly. They uttered the same self-words uttered by the Jews of old, and know it not. How well and true are his words concerning them. Leave them to entertain themselves with their cavillings. See Al-Quran, Surah 6, Ayat 91. As thou livest, O Muhammad, they are seized by the frenzy of their vain fancies. See Al-Quran, Surah 15, Ayat 72. It'd be interesting to see what is the difference between Baha Ullah and the Bab and Abdul Baha before they were considered to be prophets by their people, that, by the Baha'is. When the unseen, the eternal, and the divine essence caused the day star of Muhammad to rise above the horizon of knowledge among the cavils which the Jewish divines raised against him, after that was that after Moses no prophet should be sent of God. Yea, mention hath been made in the scriptures of a soul who must needs be manifest, and who will advance the faith and promote the interest of the people of Moses, so that the law of the Mosaic dispensation may encompass the whole earth. Thus hath the King of eternal glory referred in his book to the words uttered by those wanderers in the veil of remoteness and error. The hand of God, say the Jews, some Jews, is chained up be their own hands, And for that which they have said, they were accursed, and they outstretched both his hands. See Al-Quran, Surah 5, Ayat 64. The hand of God is above their hands. See Al-Quran, Surah 48, 10 and 18. But they even admit that, okay, if the Mohammedan dispensation has remained in its teachings, it doesn't matter who decides to follow or not follow it. Wouldn't it still be the valid path if the laws have been put on an international age? Wouldn't it, it doesn't matter where you're born or what your ancestry is, that sort of thing. Wouldn't it also mean the same thing? Although the commentators of the Quran have related in diverse manners the circumstances attending the revelation of this verse, yet thou shouldest endeavor to apprehend the purpose thereof. He saith, how false is that which the Jews have imagined? How can the hand of him who is the King in truth, who caused the countenance of Moses to be made manifest, and conferred upon him the robe of prophethood, how can the hand of such a one be chained and fettered? How can he be conceived as powerless to raise up another messenger after Moses? Behold the absurdity of their saying. How far it has strayed from the path of knowledge and understanding. Observe how in this day also these people have occupied themselves with such foolish absurdities. For over 1,000 years they have been reciting this verse, unwittingly pronouncing their censure against the Jews, utterly unaware that they themselves, openly and privily, are voicing the same sentiments and belief of the Jewish people. Well, if commentators and stuff are allowed, I'm again not sure. Now, thou art surely aware of their idle contention, that all revelation is ended, that the portals of divine mercy are closed. That last part is not what they said. No Muslim would ever say the portals of divine mercy are closed. From the day springs of eternal holiness, no sun shall rise again, that the ocean of everlasting bounty is forever stilled, and that out of the tabernacle of ancient glory the messengers of God have ceased to be made manifest. Now, whether you're Shia or Sunni or whatever, Islam teaches, according to the narrations that you have accepted or whatever, that there will continually be revivers of the faith, at least, one big final one, and one every century, to revive parts of the tradition that were, put aside. And that out of the tabernacle of ancient glory, the messengers of God have ceased to be made manifest. Yeah, if the messages exist, why don't the messengers... Why do we need living messengers? Isn't that fanaticism? Such is the measure of the understanding of these small-minded, contemptible people. These people have imagined that the flow of God's all-encompassing grace and plenteous mercies, the cessation of which no mind can contemplate, has been halted. From every side they have risen and girded up the loins of tyranny, and exerted the utmost endeavor to quench with the bitter waters of their vain fancy the flame of God's burning bush, oblivious that the globe of power shall within its own mighty stronghold protect the lamp of God. The utter destitution unto which the people have fallen doth assuredly suffice them, inasmuch as they have been deprived of the recognition of the essential purpose of the knowledge of the mystery and substance of the cause of God. For the highest and most excelling grace bestowed upon men is the grace of attaining unto the presence of God, and his recognition which has been promised unto all people. Now, experiencing the presence of God and certain other things from the prophethood remain. So, what are the three things that remain? The true dream or the true vision. This is by the utmost degree of grace vouchsafed unto man by the all-bountiful, the Ancient of Days, and the fullness of his absolute bounty upon his creatures. Of this grace and bounty none of this people hath partaken, neither have they been honored with this most exalted distinction. How numerous are those revealed verses which explicitly bear witness unto this most weighty truth and exalted theme, and yet they have rejected it, and after their own desire misconstrued its meaning, even as he hath revealed. As for those who believe not in the signs of God, are that they shall ever meet him, these of my mercy shall despair, and for them doth a grievous chastisement await. See Al-Quran, Surah 29, 8, 30, Surah 29, 8, 23. He also saith, they who bear in mind that they shall attain unto the presence of their Lord, and that unto him they shall return. See Al-Quran, Surah 2, 8, 46. Also in another instance, he saith, those who held it as certain that they must meet God said, how oft by God's will they must meet God, said, they that who held it as certain that they must meet God said, how oft by God's will hath a small host vanquished a numerous host. See Al-Quran, Surah 2, 8, 249. In yet another instance, he revealeth, let him then who hopeth to attain the presence of his Lord work a righteous work. See Al-Quran, Surah 18, ayat 111. And also he saith, he ordereth all things, he maketh his signs clear, that ye may have firm faith in attaining the presence of your Lord. See Al-Quran, Surah 13, 2. These people have repudiated all these verses that unmistakably testify to the reality of attainment unto the divine presence. No theme hath been more emphatically asserted in the Holy Scriptures, notwithstanding they have deprived themselves of this lofty and most exalted rank, this supreme and glorious station. Some have contended that by attainment unto the divine presence is meant the revelation of God in the day of resurrection. Should they assert that the revelation of God signifieth a universal revelation, it is clear and evident that such a revelation already existeth in all things. The truth of this we have already established, inasmuch as we have demonstrated that all things are the recipients and revealers of the splendors of that ideal King, and that the signs of the revelation of that Son, the source of all splendor, exist and are manifest in the mirrors of beings. Nay, were man to gaze with the eye of divine and spiritual discernment, he will readily recognize that nothing whatsoever can exist without the revelation of the splendor of God, the ideal King. Consider how all created things eloquently testify to the revelation of that inner light within them. Behold how within all things the portals of the Ridvan of God are opened, that the seekers may attain the cities of understanding and wisdom, and enter the gardens of knowledge and power. Within every garden they will behold the mystic bride of inner meaning enshrined within the chambers of utterance. In the utmost grace and fullest adornment. Most of the verses of the Quran indicate and bear witness to this spiritual theme. The verse, "Neither is there aught which doth not celebrate his praise," see Al-Quran Surah 17, 844, is eloquent testimony thereto. And we noted all things and wrote them down. See Al-Quran Surah 78, 829, 78, 29. A faithful witness thereof. Now if by attainment unto the presence of God is meant attainment unto the knowledge of such revelation, it is evident that all men have already attained unto the presence of the unchangeable countenance of that peerless King. Why then restrict such revelation to the day of resurrection? And were they to maintain that my divine presence is meant the specific revelation of God, expressed by certain Sufis as the most holy outpouring, if this be in the essence itself, it is evident that it hath been externally in the divine knowledge. Assuming the truth of this hypothesis, attainment unto the divine presence is in this sense obviously possible to no one, inasmuch as this revelation is confined to the innermost essence, unto which no man can attain. The way is barred, and all seeking rejected. The minds of the favorites of heaven, however high they soar, can never attain this station, how much less the understanding of obscured and limited minds. And were they to say that by divine presence is meant the secondary revelation of God, interpreted as the holy outpouring, this is admittedly applicable to the world of creation that is in the realm of the primal and original manifestation of God. Such revelation is confined to his prophets and chosen ones, inasmuch as none mightier than they hath come to exist in the world of being. This truth all recognize and bear witness thereto. These prophets and chosen ones of God are the recipients and revealers of all the unchangeable attributes and names of God. They are the mirrors that truly and faithfully reflect the light of God. Whatsoever is applicable to them is in reality applicable to God himself, who is both the visible and the invisible. The knowledge of him, who is the origin of all things, and attainment unto him are impossible, save through knowledge of and attainment unto these luminous beings who proceed from the Sun of Truth. By attaining therefore to the presence of these holy luminaries, the presence of God himself is attained. From their knowledge, the knowledge of God is revealed, and from the light of their countenance, the splendor of the face of God is made manifest. Through the manifold attributes of these essences of detachment, who are both the first and the last, the seen and the hidden, is made evident that he who is the Son of Truth is the first and the last, the seen and the hidden. See Al-Quran Surah 57, 8-3. Likewise, the other lofty names and exalted attributes of God. Therefore, whosoever and in whatever dispensation hath recognized and attained unto the presence of these glorious, these resplendent, and most excellent luminaries, hath verily attained unto the presence of God himself, and entered the city of eternal and immortal life. Attainment unto such presence is possible only in the day of resurrection, which is the day of the rise of God himself through his all-embracing revelation. This is the meaning of the day of resurrection, spoken of in all the scriptures, and announced unto all the people. Reflect, can a more precious, a mightier, and a more glorious day than this be conceived, so that man should willingly forego its grace, and deprive himself of its bounties, which, like unto vernal showers, are raining from the heaven of mercy upon all mankind, Having thus conclusively demonstrated that no day is greater than this day, and no revelation more glorious than this revelation, and having set forth all these weighty and infallible proofs, which no understanding mind can question, and no man of learning overlook, how can man possibly, through the idle contention of the people of doubt and fancy, deprive himself of such a bountiful grace? Have they not heard the well-known tradition, when the Qa'im riseth, that day is the day of resurrection? In like manner, the Imams, those unquenchable lights of divine guidance, have interpreted the verse. What can such expect but that God should come down to them, overshadowed with the clouds? See Al-Quran, Surah 2, Ayat 210. A sign which they have unquestionably regarded as one of the features of the day of resurrection, as referring to Qa'im and his manifestation. Imam's Zaman. Strive, therefore, O my brother, to grasp the meaning of resurrection, and cleanse thine ears from the idle sayings of that rejected people. Shouldest thou step into the realm of complete detachment, thou wilt readily testify that no day is mightier than this day, and that no resurrection more awful than this resurrection can ever be conceived. One righteous work performed in this day equaleth all the virtuous acts which, for myriads of centuries, men have practiced. Nay, we seek forgiveness of God for such comparison. For verily the reward which such a deed deserveth is immensely beyond and above the estimate of men. Inasmuch as these undiscerning and wretched souls have failed to apprehend the true meaning of resurrection and of the attainment unto the divine presence, they therefore have remained utterly deprived of the grace thereof. Although the sole and fundamental purpose of all learning and the toil and labor thereof is attainment unto and the recognition of this station, yet they are all immersed in the pursuit of the material studies. They deny themselves every moment of leisure and utterly ignore him who is the essence of all learning and the one object of their quest. Methinks their lips have never touched the cup of divine knowledge, nor do they seem to have attained even a dewdrop of the showers of heavenly grace. Consider how can he that faileth in the day of God's revelation attain unto the grace of the divine presence, and to recognize his manifestation, be justly called learned, though he may have spent aeons in the pursuit of knowledge and acquired all the limited and material learning of men. It is surely evident that he can in no wise be regarded as possessed of true knowledge, whereas the most learned of all men, if he be honored with the supreme distinction, he verily is accounted as one of the divinely learned men